So I'm going to start off by talking about a multi-year lawsuit that was just resolved this week. And basically, this involves the question of whether or not it's legal to teach Islam in a public school. What a judge said this week, getting to the heart of the matter, is that no, that is not a constitutional violation. And I think that should seem obvious. And yet this took like 6 years to resolve. And I want to kind of go through that history because it's kind of messed up how that happened. Basically, this whole story revolves around a middle school in New Jersey where they were teaching 7th graders a required class. It's called World Cultures and Geography. And basically, the idea here is, hey, middle school kids, there's a lot of different parts of the world you may not be familiar with. We're going to introduce you to where in the world we are talking about, what the culture is like there, what are the religious beliefs of the people who typically live there, things like that. So, yeah, that's what you should learn around that age. Fine. One of the units in that course covered the Middle East and North Africa. We're going to talk about the culture there and the people who live there. That seems like an appropriate place to bring up Islam and what the basic beliefs of Islam are for the people in America, for the middle schoolers who don't know anything about it. So here's the thing. I'm going to share this with you in a second. In 2017, there were a couple of parents who showed up to a school board meeting, and basically they started complaining about all this. Let me show this to you here. Look at the date on this article, February 7th, 2017. And as we're looking at this article, 2 things you got to know. One is that one parent complained that they were teaching Islam in the classroom because, check this out, one parent talked about how, her name is Nancy Gayer, she said her son was not allowed to show his PowerPoint to the class because it was proselytizing. She compared it to the World Cultures and Geography class her son is taking at the middle school, which she believes is outright proselytizing in violation of district policy. Like, do we really need to talk about why those are apples and oranges at this point? Her son wanted to proselytize during some class presentation, and I guess the teacher said no. And then the teachers were teaching kids about Islam, like the very basic beliefs of it. And this mother thought those were comparable somehow. So that's messed up on one end. But then it got worse. And the next parent is the one worth keeping an eye on here because she's the one who ultimately filed the lawsuit. This other mother that got involved here, her name is Libby Hilsenrath, as you can see here. And she handed out material which has been emailed to the board and gave some details she felt crossed the line into proselytizing during a cartoon video shown to the students. And here's the thing. I'm not going to show you the video. I don't know what rights I have to show you the full video. But basically, let me describe the video for you. It's a 5-minute animation of a Muslim kid and a non-Muslim kid. And basically, the non-Muslim kid is wondering what his buddy believes in. And the buddy says, oh, let me tell you the basic beliefs of Islam. So the kid goes through, like, these are the 5 pillars of Islam. It says, like, what do you believe, Muslim child? And the Muslim kid says, I believe there is no God except Allah. Yeah, I mean, that is a basic Islamic belief. What the mother said, Libby Hilsenrath, what she said is that the video states that Allah is the maker of everything, the one true God, and the main character in the cartoon video is looking for converts, which is not how 5-minute kids animation works. And so she was mad about the cartoon. He's not looking for converts, by the way. He's basically educating his friend who knows nothing about the religion. When the kid in the video says Muslims believe there is no God except Allah, yeah, that's accurate. That is what Muslims believe, which is why the Muslim character, fictional one, said it. So anyway, she also complained, the mother, she also complained about how that unit did not cover Christianity and Judaism. even though both of those religions are also in the Middle East and North Africa, which is true. But also, there are plenty of other places around the world where you could discuss Christianity and Judaism. And by the way, they do in this curriculum. But in that particular unit, they're not saying only Muslims live there. It's that, hey, this seems like an appropriate time to bring up these beliefs. So here's the thing. The school district is completely right because they basically defended what they were doing. The superintendent said these lessons are aligned with the New Jersey Common Core curriculum. They covered many religions, not just one. But these mothers kept whining and whining and whining. And guess what happened after that? They decided to go on Tucker Carlson's show, those two mothers, to complain about what was being done. And guess how that played out? It's exactly as you would expect. Check this out. Things changed when those moms appeared on Tucker Carlson tonight. This is according to, who is this again? This is the board president, the school board president of the district, Jill Weber. She said Miss Libby Hilsenrath went on national television on February 20th, 2017, mind you, and made some patently false statements about the district. Specifically, that our curriculum crossed the line because it teaches one religion and not all others. Another quote, no other religion is taught. That's what she said on Tucker Carlson. Not true. It was that last statement that caused dozens and dozens of hate mail, violent, vulgar mail to the district, violent threats against our employees, violent threats against our employees' families, death threats against our employees, physical harm to our buildings, and this went on for a while. One threat was so credible, the federal authorities had to get involved. So that's what these women were doing when they went on Tucker Carlson to spread lies because they're too dumb to understand what's happening in their own school district. And by the way, we saw this happening just this week while the Republicans in the U.S. House are trying to figure out who their next leader is. Jim Jordan, the ultra-conservative MAGA cultist guy, when he realized he wasn't going to get the votes that he needed, what did he do to like the 20 Republicans who didn't want to vote for him? Basically, he got his right-wing allies to get their mobs in a frenzy and send death threats to those lawmakers, to their families, etc. And a bunch of those Republicans were not happy about it. I mean, to be clear, none of them cared when the same mobs went after liberals, but now they're coming after them, and they're very surprised by this. Anyway, so that's what these women did. And then in 2018, Libby Hilsenrath, one of those two mothers, decided to file a lawsuit. She filed a lawsuit against the district, basically saying everything was indoctrination. She said they were trying to push Islam on kids, that they were trying to proselytize to students and get them to convert to Islam. And of course, none of that was true. There's one part in the press release to that lawsuit I want to bring up here. This is the lawsuit from the Thomas More Law Center. This is the right-wing legal group that did all this stuff. Check this out. This is why they were mad about the unit. Clearly, 7th graders were given a sugar-coated false depiction of Islam. They were not informed of the kidnappings, beheadings, slave tradings, massacres, and persecution of non-Muslims, nor of the repression of women, all done in the name of Islam. That's what these people think 7th graders need to learn the first time they are being introduced to Islam. Not the 5 pillars, nothing about Mecca. No. They just need to be told that, like, ISIS or Islamic extremists take these beliefs and run with them and take them to these extreme, awful situations as if those extremists are representative of all Muslims. And if that's the argument you want to make about Islam, wait till I teach you all about Christianity, because you'll never believe what Christians throughout history have done in the name of their faith. Does that represent all Christians? No, of course not. If you were going to teach children about Christianity, what would you teach them? Probably something about who Jesus was and what Christians believe about Jesus. And you would not like mention, oh, by the way, the Crusades. You wouldn't bring that up on day 2. No, you save that for later, because that's clearly not the basis of the religion. But this is the lawsuit that they brought about. So this gets filed in 2018. And the question is, okay, so what happens to this lawsuit? What does a judge say? The good news is that in 2020, now, a judge finally ruled on this case. His name is Kevin McNulty. He's a US federal judge. And he ruled on the case and said, what the hell is wrong with all of you? I'm paraphrasing here. He basically tossed out the lawsuit. But I do want to bring up one of the arguments he made for what was wrong with it. First of all, he said all the things you brought up in the lawsuit, there's no clear indication indoctrination is happening. For example, the school suggested that kids who were interested in learning more about the religion, they could watch a certain video, and they included the link. But it wasn't, no one was required to watch it, and it was created by a Muslim organization, but it didn't matter because kids didn't have to watch it. They were not tested on it. There's no evidence that Hilsenrath's own son clicked that link or understood any of the, deeper meaning of what he was watching. It was also obvious to the judge that any reasonable person would know the school is not forcing kids to adopt these views. They were just offering them up as examples of what Muslims believe. For example, there was a worksheet kids had to do that they had to complete where they had to fill in the blanks about basic Islamic beliefs. For example, there is no God but blank, and blank is his messenger. You should know that the answers are Allah and Muhammad. That's a question of whether you understand basic Muslim theology. There's no demand there that everyone agree with it. You know what I mean? So he dismissed the case. But I want you to look at one specific thing. Look at how he writes this. Finally, I turn to the underlying merits, whether the challenged materials and curriculum violate the Establishment Clause. I rule that they do not. Good, fine, that is correct. But look at this. What he points to, in many respects, the Establishment Clause test is in flux. The default test has long been that of Lemon v. Kurtzman. Let's talk about that for a second. That bears a mention here because this is important. The Lemon test was in fact for several decades as a way for judges to figure out if some law violated the Constitution because it was endorsing religion. The Lemon test basically says, let's just ask 3 questions. Does the law in question have a secular purpose? If it does, should be fine. Is the law trying to advance or inhibit religion? If the answer is no, we are fine. And finally, is there excessive entanglement between church and state as a result of the law? If the answer is no, we're fine. So basically, that's the Lemon test. And it's basically the Supreme Court saying you can use this test, and if any one of those 3 things fail, well, then you could say it's illegal. But if it passes the test, then you can't say it's a violation, separation of church and state or anything like that. So this judge looked at what the lawsuit was. Like, what's the curriculum here when it comes to what we are teaching kids about Islam? Is it a secular curriculum? The answer is yes. Is it advancing religion or inhibiting religion? Obviously, no. Is it entangling church and state? No. So the judge basically says there's no entanglement here. The curriculum passes the Lemon test. We're okay. I'm dismissing this case. And that, of course, is the right conclusion. The district said this is a complete vindication of the board, the district administration, and the teachers. So why are we still talking about this? Because all that happened in 2020. Well, if you are familiar with the Bremerton case that the Supreme Court heard last year, the one where that high school football coach wanted to pray at midfield after football games, one of the things that the coach argued, that the justices argued when they were discussing that case, is that we're not going to use the Lemon test anymore. Conservative judges hate the Lemon test. They've been trying to get rid of it forever. And long story short, the Bremerton case, one of the legal issues that was discussed in the rulings is that the Lemon test is dead. You can't use it as justification for why something can or cannot be done. So the Thomas More Law Center, this mother, Hilsenrath, they appealed the case and they said, you guys, this judge who ruled against us said, oh, well, let me use the Lemon test and I'm dismissing the case. Well, he can't do that. So a higher court said, all right, we're vacating the ruling, and we're going to send this case back to that judge and say, do it again, rule based, because you can't use that tool anymore. Can't use the lemon test. Do you got a better reason that this curriculum is legal or illegal? So this goes back to the judge. And now, this week, he finally ruled again. It's been years. The kid at the center of this controversy, Hilsenrath's son, I'm pretty sure he's like graduating high school. But check out what the judge said this time around. While clearly rejecting the lemon test, the question is, what is going to replace it? And here's the part I want you to look at. He says the most prominent of those markers is the majority's emphasis on the presence or not of coercion. What he's saying is that, excuse me, what he's saying is that if I can't use the lemon test anymore, the right-wing conservative Supreme Court that currently sits on the bench, they say the better test is we're the educators trying to coerce kids into doing something religious against their will. So we could say, were they trying to force Islam on students against their will? And this time, the judge goes through the entire case again and says, well, guess what? No, they weren't. Of course, they were not trying to coerce anybody. He said, I find the record contains no evidence of significant coercion. He goes through all the things those religious lawyers mentioned, and he says direct subjective evidence of coercion is lacking. And he also says, if you want me to look at like what the founding fathers would have said, there's nothing in the curriculum that bears or resembles the hallmarks of religious establishments the framers sought to prohibit when they adopted the First Amendment. So even using conservative Christian Supreme Court rules to apply them to this case, the judge said again, it's still fine. This woman is crazy. And he dismisses the case again. It's like he finally said after 6 years what every single person except right-wing Christians and this mother knew several years ago, that teaching kids about other religions is not indoctrination. I will say, I emailed the Thomas More Law Center and I was like, hey guys, you don't have any press releases on your site about the fact that you lost. What do you think? What do you think about the fact that the judge thinks you're all idiots? I wrote a better email than that. They did not respond to me, and they still haven't issued any response to this case. And I don't know if they're going to try to appeal it again. At this point, I don't know what grounds they would use to appeal it, because again, the woman's son is graduating. It's hard to imagine he's been scarred for life as a result of having to learn about Islam for 3 days back in 7th grade. So it's the right ending, but it shows you not just how crazy some right-wing Christians are when it comes to kids learning about something that, I don't know, might steer them away from Christianity, but also the legal tactics they are trying to use to make sure no one can learn about it. But again, even if the right-wing Supreme Court is trying to destroy church-state separation, the Constitution still exists. The Establishment Clause in the First Amendment still exists. There are still ways to tell people whether something is religious indoctrination, whether it's illegal, or whether, no, it's totally fine. No one's trying to indoctrinate your kid. No one thinks about your kid like that. So good answer, good ending to this story.